So I went to see the Suicide Squad opening night last week and I haven't stopped thinking about it since, so I figured I'd make a video discussing my thoughts on the film. One thing I really appreciate about this film is how quickly it gets to the point. I hate whenever big blockbusters are overly long and filled with dull exposition. This film doesn't really have that problem at all. The mission begins almost immediately, and the first action sequence takes place around 5 to 10 minutes into the film. In this entry, Task Force X is already an established organisation, so the film doesn't have to waste a chunk of its runtime on boring setup. All the exposition is delivered efficiently, and overall the film is very tightly paced and well structured. I was shocked at how much great action, humour and character development James Gunn was able to pack into 2 hours and 12 minutes of runtime. This film also leans heavily into the disposability of the Suicide Squad, and this is reflected in the nature of the mission they're sent on. They aren't tasked with protecting the president from Superman or killing a demon or anything. They're a Black Ops group sent to destroy intelligence that could harm the American government if it came to light. As such, Waller doesn't want the operation to be public knowledge and is prepared to do anything to keep it under wraps. This creates an interesting dynamic. As we get to learn more about the members of the squad and their backstories, we no longer see them as the villains they're initially made out to be. The film's main antagonist isn't Starro or the squad themselves, but the bureaucracy that sees them as nothing more than a means to an end, an expendable resource to further their own twisted agenda. And yeah, the film really lives up to the "don't get too attached" tagline. We start with 14 squad members and that number is cut down drastically by the end. The last time I was this unsure about who's going to live to the end of a film was Infinity War, and that level of uncertainty regarding the character's survival chances is so rare in comic book films now. The deaths in the film serve a number of different purposes. Some demonstrate Waller's brutality and others are used to up the stakes of the story. Some deaths are devastating while others are hilarious. The film's over-the-top gore is pretty comedic, but it also helps to enhance the action. The use of blood and gore in fight scenes is very stylised like in the John Wick films, and it makes the attacks feel like there's genuine weight and ferocity behind them. It's just very satisfying to watch. It also helps that the action in the film is very well shot and choreographed throughout. All of the major action sequences are memorable and distinct from one another. The beach scene from the trailers is darkly funny, the finale with Starro is epic, and Harley gets a solo action scene that may just be the best one in the film. Every character gets a moment to shine in an action sequence as well, which helps to justify their place on the team in the first place. One thing that's great about this specific squad is that it feels very balanced, as the more powerful characters can also be liabilities. King Shark is an absolute tank, but he's very easily distracted, and he just also wants to eat everything. And on the other hand, you have someone like Polka Dot Man, who is extremely powerful, but the drawback is that he doesn't like to kill people, and his powers can also be a detriment to the squad in certain situations. The rest of the main squad is then rounded out with normal people who are extremely competent with the weapons they possess. Ratcatcher's powers are extremely versatile, while Bloodsport, Peacemaker and Harley do things in this film that an average soldier couldn't come close to replicating. One of the many problems with that first film is that it felt like a lot of the members were just dead weight, so I'm glad to see that this film rectifies that. As for the squad members themselves, Idris Elba was fantastic as Bloodsport. We spend a lot of time getting to know him in the beginning of the film, and out of all the characters he probably undergoes the most growth. He begins the film as a hardened, closed-off criminal and has to learn to open up to others, form meaningful relationships and to become a leader, and the payoff to his arc is immensely satisfying to watch. And what sets his journey in motion is his relationship with Ratcatcher 2. Their bond is really the heart and soul of the film. I think Ratcatcher 2 works brilliantly in this story, as she feels like the only character that is truly innocent, and watching her kindness and affection rub off on characters like Bloodsport and King Shark was really wholesome. Daniela Melchior gives an incredibly endearing performance, and I'm sure her character is going to be a fan favourite. I never thought I'd get chills from watching a horde of rats climb up a giant starfish, but here we are. And speaking of King Shark, he's as hilarious as the trailers would lead you to believe. Stallone's line delivery is top notch, and I really like the CG on him. In fact, this whole movie has really good special effects. Peacemaker is a wonderfully obnoxious jock whose ideology is one massive contradiction, and I love his dynamic with Bloodsport. Both characters share a very similar skill set and backstory, but their personalities are polar opposites, so it's a lot of fun to watch them clash. I was surprised when I heard that the character was originally written for Batista, because John Cena fits the role perfectly. And then there's Polka Dot Man. James Gunn said that he added him to the film after googling who's the dumbest DC character of all time and finding him to be the answer. And yet, David Dastmalchian gives an incredibly sincere performance and manages to ground this bizarre character, making him one of the most relatable members of the entire squad. Also, thank you, David, for liking my tweet. You're an absolute legend. I was shocked at how much I ended up liking Rick Flag in this movie. I can't really go into it as it's one of the more spoilery elements of the film, but they take his character in a very interesting direction here, and overall you can tell Joel Kinnaman is having a lot of fun in the role this time around. And as is to be expected, Margot Robbie is great as Harley Quinn. She gets a pretty sizable subplot in this film that picks up her story from where Birds of Prey left off, and as I mentioned, she may have the best action scene in the entire film. But the one through line that brings this whole film together and makes it the masterpiece that it is none other than James Gunn. This film was my most anticipated of the year, largely because I'm a big fan of Gunn's work on the Guardians films, and a lot of the things that I like about that series are present in the Suicide Squad. The most obvious thing being that both stories are about a group of misfits who come together to become heroes. But what sets this film apart from something like Guardians is that not all of the squad members go on this journey. Not every character is someone who is just good at heart, who happens to be down on their luck. Some members of the squad are just awful people who sabotage the group for their own benefit. And the discovery of where each character truly lands on the spectrum was one of the most interesting aspects of the story for me. But similarly to the Guardians films, Gunn's script strikes a fine balance of great humour and genuine emotion. All of the characters here are well fleshed out, their personalities, backstories and goals are all well defined, and I feel it's one of those movies where every main character is going to be someone's favourite. It's an emotionally rich story that touches on multiple important themes, namely how family isn't defined by blood, the value of kindness, the nature of control, the brutality of American foreign policy, and how those deemed outcasts by society should not be looked down upon. It really is a testament to Gunn's writing that he was able to pull all this off so effectively in a story where a bunch of metahumans fight a giant starfish, but I guess that's just to be expected at this point. To conclude, The Suicide Squad is the best film DC has produced since The Dark Knight back in 2008, and to be honest, it isn't even close. Even though it was my most anticipated film of the year, it still managed to exceed my expectations. The characters are fantastic, the story is captivating, the jokes are hilarious, the visuals are stunning, the action is brutal, and the soundtrack is just perfection. But more than anything, this film is a testament to how obstacles really do become opportunities.